"You will serve me," she said, her eyes gleaming with cold intent. "But first, you must be born twice into the world of men." In the heart of Aman's village, hidden by thick forests and a river that sparkled under the morning sun, these mysteries were deeply rooted. Long ago, a powerful native doctor, revered and feared, lived by the riverside. His fame spread far beyond Amanze, for he was said to commune directly with the spirits. It was whispered that the mermaid spirit of the river granted him his powers. But when he died, the villagers believed the connection was severed. Little did they know that the spirit had its eyes on his only son, Uwaike. One fateful morning, as Uwaike knelt by the riverbank washing clothes, a chill ran down his spine. He felt an unseen force pulling him towards the water. Before he could react, a powerful current swept him in. The next thing he saw was a world beyond imagination, a kingdom beneath the river, glowing with an erring blue light. The mermaid spirit seated on a crystal stone spoke with a voice that echoed like 1,000 waves, crashing against the shore. "You will serve me," she said, her eyes gleaming with cold intent. "But first, you must be born twice into the world of men." Uwaike shivered as she explained his mission: to bring destruction, chaos, and sorrow to the world. The Council of Spirits convened, deciding that barren, desperate women would be used as vessels for their agents. They gazed into a magical mirror, scanning the earth for a suitable woman. The mirror's surface rippled, revealing Ifeoma, a woman worn down by years of longing for a child. "She will bear you," the mermaid spirit decreed, her lips curling into a cruel smile. "Go and fulfill your purpose." Christmas was supposed to be a time of joy, a season of hope and celebration. But for Ifeoma, it was a reminder of her greatest sorrow. Another year had passed, and once again, her arms were empty. No child to call her own, no laughter to fill her home. It had been 10 years since she married Izuna, and despite all efforts, the cry of a baby had never blessed their household. On this particular Christmas Eve, the atmosphere in the village was lively. Women gathered at the marketplace, buying fresh vegetables, fish, and palm wine for the celebration. Men prepared their traditional outfit for the coming Iwaakwa festival, a ceremony that brought together the entire community. But Ifeoma felt none of the festive cheer. She sat alone in the living room, her heart heavy with anxiety. She could hear her husband Izuna outside, discussing plans with some villagers. Though Izuna had always been supportive, Ifeoma knew he too felt the weight of their childlessness. As she sat, lost in thought, her mind drifted to the countless things she had tried over the years. Hospital visits, herbal remedies, endless nights of prayer and fasting. Nothing had worked. The whispers and taunts of the villagers echoed in her mind, each word like a dagger piercing her heart. "Why are you suffering your husband? Give him a child," a woman had told her just days ago, her tone dripping with disdain. Another time, she had overheard a group of women gossiping. "She doesn't want to give birth because she had done so many abortions before marriage," one of them had said. If only they knew the truth, Ifeoma thought bitterly. Later that evening, Izuna returned home, looking visibly tired. He sat down heavily beside her, wiping the sweat off his brow. "The preparations for the Iwaakwa festival are going well," he said. "But Mazi Okeke refused to pay his levy again. I had to confront him. If only you have children, perhaps you wouldn't be harassing me to pay a mere levy. Mazokeke's words rang in his ears, stinging his pride. Though he had tried to brush it off, it had hurt deeply. He didn't want to admit it to Ifeoma, but he was growing weary of the constant reminders of their childlessness. That night after dinner, Ifeoma overheard a conversation between Izuna and his mother. "You must act like a man," his mother said sternly. "Send her away and marry another woman who can give you children. How long will you wait?" Tears welled up Ifeoma's eyes as she listened. The pain was almost unbearable. Izuna had always defended her, but she could sense his patience waning. For the first time, a seed of doubt began to grow in her heart, a doubt that would soon lead her down a dangerous path. Days after overhearing the conversation between Izuna and his mother, Ifeoma found herself sinking deeper into despair. The thought of losing her husband or being sent away consumed her mind. She prayed fervently, but the weight of unanswered prayers crushed her faith. One evening, her childhood friend Azoka visited. Azoka was known for her boldness, and Ifeoma had always admired her fairy spirit. As they sat in the dimly lit living room, Azoka leaned forward, her voice low. "Ifeoma, you cannot continue like this," she said. "I know someone who can help you. He's a powerful native doctor. Many women have gone to him, and they all came back with babies." Ifeoma's eyes widened in shock. "Tufiakwa, Azoka, how can you say such a thing? You know I believe in God. Only He can give children." Azoka frowned. "How long will you keep waiting, Ifeoma? 10 years have passed, and nothing has changed. Heaven help those who help themselves. Just visit him. If it doesn't work, what do you have to lose?" Ifeoma's heart pounded as Azoka's words echoed in her mind. That night she couldn't sleep. Thoughts of the villagers' taunts and her mother-in-law's harsh words haunted her. As dawn broke, she made a decision she would later regret. 2 days later, Ifeoma found herself standing before a thatched hut at the edge of a dense forest. The native doctor's compound was eerily silent, save for the rustling leaves and the occasional chirping of birds. Her hands trembled as she approached the door. "Come in," a deep voice called from inside, as though he had sensed her presence. Ifeoma stepped in cautiously. The air inside the hut was thick with the smell of burning herbs. The native doctor, an old man with piercing eyes, sat cross-legged on a mat, a small pot of black concoction smearing before him. "Why are you here?" he asked, his voice calm yet commanding. Ifeoma hesitated, her voice barely above a whisper. "I want a child." The native doctor smiled faintly. "You shall have one," he said. "But once you drink this," he pointed to the bubbling concoction, "there is no turning back." Her heart pounded as she reached for the pot. She closed her eyes, whispered a silent prayer, and drank the concoction. A strange sensation coursed through her body, and she felt faint. Before she could react, everything went dark. Meanwhile, at Pastor Dan's church that same evening, Pastor Dan was in his prayer room, seeking God's face. Suddenly, he felt a strong burden in his spirit. He knelt down, interceding fervently. "Lord, what is it?" he prayed aloud. In a vision, he saw Ifeoma standing at a riverbank, surrounded by darkness. A voice echoed in the background saying, "She must remain steadfast or the enemy will claim her." Pastor Dan immediately understood. God wanted him to intercede for her. Without wasting time, he called for a night vigil at the church. Members gathered and together they prayed earnestly for Ifeoma, not knowing she was at that very moment making a decision that would change her life forever. When Ifeoma regained consciousness, she was back in her home, unsure how she had gotten there. Days later, she began feeling strange symptoms: nausea, fatigue, and a sharp pain in her lower abdomen. At first, she dismissed it as the aftermath of the concoction she drank, but when the symptoms persisted, she decided to visit the hospital. Ifeoma, congratulations, you are pregnant, the doctor said with a warm smile. Her heart leapt with joy, tears streaming down her face as she thanked God. For the first time in 10 years, she felt hopeful. She rushed home to share the news with Izuna. He was overjoyed, lifting her off the ground in a tight embrace. "This is a miracle," he exclaimed. "God has finally answered our prayers." But as the months passed, strange things began to happen. Ifeoma's pregnancy was anything but normal. She often felt sharp, unexplained pains that left her gasping for breath. At night, she had terrifying dreams of a child surrounded by darkness, laughing menacingly. One night, as she lay in bed, she felt the baby move, but it wasn't the gentle kick she had read about. It was as though the child was thrashing violently inside her. Suddenly, she heard a faint smile, a sound that seemed to come from within her womb. "Izuna, did you hear that?" she whispered, shaking him awake. "Hear what?" he asked grudgingly. "Nothing. Maybe it's just my imagination," she muttered, her heart racing. 9 months later, on a stormy night, Ifeoma went into labor. The skies darkened and thunder rumbled ominously as Izuna rushed her to the hospital. The labor was long and difficult, and for hours, Ifeoma fought to bring her child into the world. Nurses exchanged worried glances as she screamed in agony. "This isn't normal," one of the nurses whispered to another. "She's been in labor for too long." Just as they considered taking her into the theater, a strange calmness filled the room. Ifeoma, drenched in sweat, gave one final push, and a baby boy was born. The storm outside stopped abruptly, as though the heavens were watching. But what unnerved everyone was the baby's silence. No cry, no sound, just a cold, unblinking stare. The nurse handed the baby to Ifeoma. "Congratulations, is a boy," she said, forcing a smile. Ifeoma gazed at her son, her heart torn between joy and an unexplainable fear. The child's eyes, dark and piercing, seemed too aware for a newborn. Still, she whispered a prayer of gratitude, trying to dismiss the unease creeping into her heart. They named him Uwaike, meaning life is hard, a name that would prove prophetic in the most terrifying way.